Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. Hello everybody, welcome back. Episode 22 of the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast. This week we're joined by somebody that's actually currently on their travels, and they've come a very, very long way. We are joined by Rohith Ashok. He tells me how to say it in a minute, you'll hear. He's travelled all the way from Chennai in India just to be with us today, honestly. He's alternatively known as the Toll-Free Traveller, and he makes some awesome videos. We're delighted he's here. He's joined us in real life, in person. He's going to talk about his life in India, how he got into travelling, a bit more detail about riding in India, and also about the Great Indian Trail, the GRIT, G-R-I-T, Great Indian Trail. Right, here we go. We're just saying how weird it is recording live and in person with three of us sitting in the same studio.
It's like a formal interview.
It took someone to come halfway across the world to make this happen.
And Noel nearly didn't actually come. You were very funny yesterday when you said, listen, I've come all the way from India. I'm sure Noel can make it over here from Kendal.
And I said it's easier to get from India to here than it is from my house to here.
Believe me, it's not if you're coming through Scotland, like a slight detour.
So we've got Rohith Ashok with us today.
Is he saying it right?
With an Indian accent, it would be Rohith Ashok. Ashok is my father's name.
Ashok is also a first name as well, isn't it?
Yes, it can be. So it's my father's first name. So in South India, we take our father's names as our surname. Not everyone, some communities do. And in the North, you usually have a family name that just continues down as you sort of like everybody has the same surname, father and son. So for us, it changes.
Have you got any middle names? No.
William.
And me?
Yes, we share the same middle name.
Well, I used to be called Will. Will was my family name was always Will, with two L's. Not like those other two weirdos we know.
Is it the same for the girls?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And then, like after marriage, you take some people take their husband's names, not everyone.
Rohith is also known, possibly more well-known, for being the toll-free traveller.
Yeah, it's funny, I respond to that now. People call me toll-free or TFT, and then I turn around and I respond. And then I wonder, why am I responding to that? Like how? That's not my name.
Where did that come from?
I guess it's a connection to motorcycling. In India, we have a lot of toll roads. I don't know whether you have too many toll roads here. I haven't really seen.
Not in the UK. We've got one.
I mean, you're a toll-free country then, so you don't know one person.
It's no big deal here, right? We're all toll-free.
Yeah, you're all toll-free. So yeah, I mean, we have this challenge of like now getting between any place, you're almost always like paying for fuel and you're paying tolls, like quite a bit. I've spent a lot of time motorcycling across India, and one of the first few trips that I did, and I came back, I realized that the money that I'd saved on tolls, I'd literally spent that on fuel and gone like 3 times as far and for like 2 months longer than I would have if I'd been doing anything else. And of course, motorcycling is a huge part of what I do, but it also ties into like backpacking and bicycling and hiking and all of the things that I want to do. And yeah, it just sort of sounded catchy. So it came in. My father and I, in fact, spoke about this, and yeah, I had a lot of bad ideas, I'm sure, with names when I was trying to set this up, but I never imagined that it would become something, so I'm glad we went with Toll-Free Traveller, yeah.
So how long have you been doing it for?
I think I made my first video as Toll-Free Traveller 2016, September possibly.
Quite recent then.
Yeah, and the next video I made was probably December, and that trend has continued, so I'm a terrible YouTuber.
We know a few of those.
Oh yeah. Like they say, make 3 videos every week, otherwise you're not going to do well. But fortunately for me, I've been able to make way fewer videos than I would have been expected to, and yet grow a lovely community of people who sort of follow what I do and support me and encourage me to do more of it.
You have got quite a lot of followers both on Instagram and YouTube.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm grateful for what I have. I think these numbers are always subjective. I mean, they're relative. Like one person's lot is another person's little. I don't know how it works. And India is a huge country. So when you look at these numbers against like the population that you have there, it's not that much. But for me, really, I think where I realized this, I think when I started off, obviously the numbers were way smaller. But sometime in 2017, maybe, I had like this interaction where I met people who follow the content that I create, right? And it was only when like 120 people showed up in one place to meet me who'd seen what I had done based on just like 3 videos that it struck me how large these numbers truly are. Like when you look at them digitally, it means nothing. Like you can take a number like 20,000 and it could mean nothing to you. But if you imagine 20,000 people like in one place listening to you, that's crazy. So, I mean, I'm grateful for the numbers that I have.
They are big. So I think on YouTube you have about 150,000 subscribers.
130 something.
Oh, so around there. Yeah.
See what I mean? Yeah. Now you're making me feel bad. Damn it, I wish I had 150. Yeah. It's on you, Clive. You've got to get me another 12,000 subscribers so that I can hit that number.
I was trying to build you up. Sorry. And then your videos, you've got a whole heap of videos that have got well over 400,000 views, which are big numbers. Must make you feel as if you're doing something worthwhile.
To be like really, really honest, the two milestones that meant a lot was when my first video crossed 1,000 views, which genuinely happened because my parents shared it on WhatsApp with all of their friends, right? I created my first video just to be able to tell people. I'd done a 4-month-long trip across India from Chennai in the south all the way up to Ladakh in the north. Ladakh is in the Himalayas. A lot of people, it's like a bucket list travel destination. And it's something that I wanted to do. And while I was a corporate lawyer, which is what I did before I started doing this, I had pictures of the lakes of Ladakh. And I dreamt that I would one day go there on a motorcycle for a 1-week holiday, right? That was the dream. And I couldn't make it happen for 4 years, despite the fact that I was making a decent amount of money. And after I quit my job, not knowing what I wanted to do, it turns out I went and spent 3 weeks in Ladakh on a motorcycle, right? Doing all of the things that like the money never enabled me to do. But when I did that trip, it was intended to be a 28-day trip. I ended up doing 4 months on the road across India. Some parts of it I rode with a few people. Some parts I rode alone. And I met so many wonderful people along the way. It really changed a lot in terms of perspective. And when I came back, obviously there were a lot of people who didn't understand what I was doing with my life. In India, we function differently. Like, there's a path, a safe path through life. There's a good path through life. There's a right path through life. Basically, with the decisions I'd made, I was not good marriage material for sure. Probably still am not. But I'm fortunate that someone along the way decided that I was worth it and she took the plunge. But I'd shot some footage, right? And back then it was nothing. 4 months on the road, I had 32 GB of footage. That's it. Today I create that kind of quantity of footage on a daily basis. But that time, 4 months on the road, 32 GB, I went to a whole bunch of people and I was like, I have this, can you help me make a film that I can then show people to tell them what I have done in these last 4 months? Of course, social media was a different place 5 years ago. Everybody made it out to be like such a big deal. They were like, oh, I've got to edit this video. That's a lot of work. I try to figure it out. And then I realized I was doing nothing with my life. I had all the time in the world to figure this out. So I watched YouTube and I learned how to make a video from YouTube. And then the first video I ever made in my life, I took it and put it on YouTube because I didn't understand how YouTube works. I used that to share it with people that mattered, to try to give them a glimpse of what I had experienced over those 4 months. And I think that sort of struck a chord with a lot of people. And then I just started from there.
So you've sort of touched on it a little bit in terms of what you did for a living before you started doing this. But can you just tell us a bit more about how you've ended up doing what you do now?
Where do I begin? How I've ended up, I don't know. I think it's just circumstance. What would they say? Sequence of fortunate events. I had a fairly unusual childhood by Indian standards. My parents encouraged us to do many things different in life. Sailing is not big in India, but I was a sailor when I was a kid. I used to sail for India. I didn't go to school for 3 years in the middle of the crucial Indian education system because I was sailing in different parts of the world representing the country. So my parents have always been like, they've encouraged us to live differently. All of us. I have 2 siblings as well. And eventually then I went back because you've got to conform. You can't make money as a sailor in India, not realistically. So I went back, I went and I studied, and then I went to law school, mostly because I didn't want to be a doctor or an engineer. It's like choose between these things. Sorry.
What had your parents done? Why had it ended up being sailing?
I don't know. I would have to ask them. But I'm just glad they got me into something that was different because it opened up like a lot of... You're doing so much more than what kids who go to typical schools do, right? You're dealing with so much more. You're traveling on your own at a young age. You're competing. You're thinking about things that probably kids your age are not thinking about. So it was a very, very different experience for me, and it really taught me to like live on my own. I used to sail a dinghy by myself. It's called the Optimist. I'm sure you have it here in the UK because sailing's so much more popular here.
What kind of age were you when this was happening?
I started when I was 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So 10 to 15 was mostly spent at sea.
Wow.
So that was unusual. And then I went to law school, and then I sort of became conformist. We're a middle-class family in India. So if you want to figure life out for yourself, you want to take chances, you've got to go out and make your own money. I mean, I think...
Was this something you wanted to do, or did you just see it as a good path to take? Going down the...
Corporate lawyer.
Yes. Because no matter what you say, money is important. And it's very tough to live in a place where you're struggling to pay your bills. I mean, it really limits what's possible in life. It's good to do. It was definitely the first thing that I wanted to secure. Having done that, I reached a point where I then had this opportunity to continue down a path that millions of people have gone down before, or genuinely try something that I think might be that might make me happy. And the way I saw it, when I reached that point in my life, there were two options. Like I could continue doing what I'm doing and be extremely unhappy, or I could take a chance on myself, go out, try whatever I said I want to try, and then either I'm going to love it and I'm going to realize that this is what I want to keep doing, or I'm going to hate it and then I'm going to come back to what I used to do and be grateful for it, right? Not be in a good place and be ungrateful. So that was sort of like having put in those years and built that sort of base for myself, I didn't have anything to lose, really. But I didn't imagine I'd be doing what I am doing today.
Literally today, sitting in a house in the Lake District, talking to a couple of dickheads.
And were you managing to travel a lot whilst you were working?
A little bit, very little. I think it was, with every year that goes by, you do less. When you're spending so much more time...
Less travelling, or...
I mean, maybe traveling, yes, in terms of have you gone to new places? Yeah, but what did you do in those new places? Very little. Most of it was about leisure and relaxation and unwinding, you know. So there were times when I would go to like really lovely hotels and just never leave the hotel. Technically, I'd gone to a new place. Technically, I may have gone to a new country, but I'd not seen anything. It was a great holiday, but it could have been anywhere.
How did your middle-class Indian parents react to you leaving your perfect career job?
To be fair to them, they took it reasonably well, but I think they might have expected that I would have been away for a few months and then gone back to it. I don't think they expected this long haul, you know.
And at the time you knew it was going to be more than a few months?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left, but I figured that the only way I would find out is if I left. I didn't know anything about social media. I didn't know anything about... I'd never created a film. I'd never used any of these platforms. I didn't know what opportunities exist, but I looked at it as, you know, when you want to do anything, a professional course, you dedicate a few years to learning, right? Whether it's going to university, whether it's doing a diploma course or whatever it is, you spend a few years learning. So I gave myself those few years. I said, I'm going to spend money on something that I enjoy and use this as a time to learn. Most people want to switch careers and keep making the same kind of money. You've got to be very lucky for that to happen. So that learning curve was steep, but it's taken me down a completely different path.
And quite freeing not to be tied by that, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
By that goal.
Yeah, exactly.
And motorcycling, motorcycle's always been a part of life?
Always. I've enjoyed riding like scooters and motorcycles and everything, but we use them to commute a lot. So in India, the motorcycling culture is quite different. You have a lot of people who just ride motorcycles every single day of their lives, and they're small capacity motorcycles, but they're just as much fun. I think the first bike I rode must have been like a 100cc.
What would it be? What make of bike would that be?
It was a Victor, a TVS Victor, borrowed from a friend. Because at that point, I was not allowed to ride motorcycles. It's not very safe in India. I mean, it's not safe anywhere in the world, but in India, it's extremely unsafe.
What are the age restrictions then? How?
18.
18 to get on a bike?
18 to get on a bike. God. And you've got to get a specific license for it, but it's not too tough to get.
Well, I'm surprised at that. You know, it's 16 here to get on a 50cc bike, I think.
I don't know whether you still get it. I think there was something about 16 for a 50cc, but 18 is where you can get it. Not everyone waits until they're 18. I may or may not have.
We were talking about this yesterday. I used to work for an Indian company and went out to travel to India a few times for work. And I was just looking up, trying to remember the name of the Infosys. There's like an adventure motorcycle club within Infosys. Infosys is massive. They employ hundreds of thousands of people in India.
It's like a country in itself.
Exactly, yeah. And I met up with one of these guys from the motorcycle club, and he took me to see one of the garages on the campus. And it was one of these multiple story garages full of thousands, row upon row of motorbikes and they're all like cheaper Indian heroes and things like that. But he was very proud of his because there was one KTM on the whole floor, and it stood out because it was bright orange. Still a small capacity bike, but yeah, it's fascinating. But yeah, it's very much over there. Everybody has motorbikes because they use them for commuting on, right?
Not everybody. When I was working in a law firm in Mumbai, and I think we must have been about 300 lawyers, I was at that time the only one who rode a motorcycle. I mean, a lot of like the staff rode motorcycles, but typically people who are a bit more affluent in India move on to cars. To answer your question, do a lot of people ride motorcycles? Definitely, but it is sort of segregated, and then there are some people who are just like forever on two wheels.
There seems to me there is more of a movement towards using motorcycles for leisure now.
Definitely, I think it's always been there, but it's gaining a lot more popularity now. Big bikes are quite popular, and then you have the whole medium capacity motorcycles. Our options are still quite limited compared to what you get here.
And why are they limited? What's behind that?
I have no idea.
Is it taxation on imports?
Cost, maybe?
I mean, it is expensive, but quite often I'm sitting and wondering why. Like, I'm currently riding this CRF 300 Rally over here, a beautiful motorcycle that a friend was kind enough to lend to me.
Very kind. It's brand new.
Yeah, Nicholas deserves everything good in life for letting me do this.
Nicholas, you're a good man.
I didn't realise this is a loaner, this bike.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, so kind of him.
Yeah.
And before Rohit leaves, Nicholas, I'm going to make sure that chain's oiled and cleaned properly.
Are you just getting me in trouble for no reason whatsoever?
Yeah, it's what we do.
Yeah, thank you. Just so that he won't lend a bike to me again. Yeah.
We might have to clean it as well before you go.
Maybe I can just take yours.
Yeah. No, don't take mine. It's only a year old, but it looks like it's about 10 years old.
Aren't we taking it somewhere perilous tomorrow?
We're heading into the Lake District, which does have some very technical trails, but Rohit has said he would rather avoid the very technical stuff.
Me too, yeah.
So we won't go up. We won't go to Grisdale, for example. We won't go over Gatesgarth or Brest High.
Of course not.
So we'll just do some of the easier.
Yeah, good.
There's some nice routes.
Oh, that
there?
suits me perfectly.
But some very beautiful and very very scenic, and maybe the horseshoe, the
Top of Langdale.
yeah,
Of course,
yeah.
that'd be superb.
I mean, that'd be amazing. That's
Yeah.
just absolutely beautiful. So
Yeah.
we'll spend more time on the road tomorrow than we might normally.
But it's a nicer day out if you avoid the technical stuff. I was thinking this watching Ollie's film, because you end up going, and Ashley was watching it with me and saying, I don't understand this trail riding. You're just in between hedges and you don't see anything. I thought, well, no, you don't really on a lot of trail riding.
That's you, though. Most trail riders enjoy difficult technical trails.
Stuff. I don't. This is why I sort of prefer road riding, because you sometimes see way more from the roads than you do from the tiny little
I think
tracks.
it's a niche, right? You've got to gear yourself up for that in terms of skill, in terms of equipment, in terms of even as an overall experience. The entire experience is the challenge, probably. Yeah. And of course, the camaraderie and like helping each other out and all of the fun that's had in the process of doing that. I've seen great videos of all of you doing that. I'm happy to watch.
You're right. Most of the fun is had when you stop riding and you talk about what you've just done, or you're helping somebody pick their bike up.
It's definitely a great thing to do as long as it works for you.
You tend to ride on your own mostly because you head off for 4 months, and most people can't head off for 4 months, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a gang back in Chennai that you ride out with?
To tell you the truth, when I'm in Chennai, I mean, I use a motorcycle to commute still, but I don't ride too much. Home is home. I still commute on a motorcycle. I ride a motorcycle all the time, but not in terms of like going off on outings and stuff like that. I've done that, but now when I get home, I enjoy doing something different. When you start doing what you enjoy as work, then it's important to start finding ways to balance it so that you continue to enjoy doing it.
I also think going on trips ruins riding at home. Riding at home just seems dull, doesn't it, after you've been on a big trip somewhere?
It's different for you because you spend more time on trips than actually being at home. Whereas those of us that have maybe one trip a year get very excited about going out when you're at home.
That having been said, Chennai is also really hot. You need to put that into perspective as well. Our winter is at about 30 degrees. My warmest day over here has been freezing cold compared to what the temperatures are where I come from. So when you go back home, you're like, it's too hot to ride. It's a little bit spoiled maybe.
Too hot to ride, did you say?
For me, I mean, I'm used to the UK weather now.
Too hot to ride, imagine that.
I'm kidding, I'm not.
I think I'm going to say it's so hot, you choose to take the bike because it's nicer than travelling in the car in the heat.
I think you've got to come and experience it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could drink 6 liters of water a day and be dehydrated because you're just like sweating, especially when you're doing something where the adrenaline is pumping and like you're exerting yourself quite a bit. It takes a lot out of you. I mean, people do it. People do some crazy stuff in that kind of weather as well. But I guess it just depends on whether you enjoy it or not.
Chennai is southeast, isn't it?
Southeast on the coast. Yeah, so it's humid and it's hot and the beach is beautiful. It's not necessarily great trail riding country.
So you give up, and that's the wrong way of putting it, isn't it? You give up your job as a corporate lawyer. You stop doing that for a living. And what's the first thing you do?
Actually, I packed up my house and shipped away all of the big stuff in a truck, put a pair of saddlebags on my motorcycle and rode back home from Mumbai to Chennai. That was my first big motorcycle trip.
How far is that? That's quite a distance, isn't it?
Just about 1,400 kilometers, I think, if you go straight. I must have done about 3,000 because I took the longer way. Because I'd been working a corporate job before that, I imagined that I'm going to do this crazy trip. Until then, like, my biggest holiday had been 10 days, probably here in the UK. I'd come here once 10 years ago. And then I planned a 17 or 18-day trip, and that blew my mind. I was like, wow, this is freedom. I took almost 28 days to get home. And it's just changed travel for me forever thereafter. Like now, if you tell me to go somewhere and I have only 2 weeks, I'm like, really? May not even be worth going. It's a privilege. And I'm grateful for that.
So this was 2016.
This was actually the end of 2015.
What was your, I won't say a long-term plan, what was your short-term plan or any plan? What was your plan at that stage?
My plan was to just go live somewhere quiet and learn some carpentry. My father runs a business, a small business where he makes some furniture and stuff. So he has a few carpenters who work for him. And I just wanted to learn to make something with my hands. Because the 8 to 10 years, like I was saying, through my childhood, we'd done a lot of different things. But then once I got into this education system and then university and then work, I felt like my capabilities were just like really becoming fewer. I was a good lawyer, but that's all I was. I enjoyed the law. I didn't enjoy the environment. But there was no time because like anybody could call you anytime and give you work. So you couldn't make a plan to go and do an activity because it'll get cancelled at the last minute. So Bombay is a great place to sail. But I could never tell people that I will show up and sail on your boat on the weekend because I might have work. And you don't want to cancel on someone at the last minute. So I felt like the person I was and my capabilities were just like vanishing one after the other. So I wanted to go out and learn something new. And interestingly, until then, I'd done nothing creative in life. But the first time I built something, I made a piece of furniture by myself, was the first time that I realized that I could possibly do something creative. And I think that sort of unlocked a lot of possibilities later.
This was after you'd quit your job?
Yeah.
You mentioned already which bike you have. Do you have just one bike at the moment?
Yeah, now I have just one bike. I have the Hero X-Pulse 200, which by any stretch of imagination is a really tiny motorcycle. But in India, we don't really have too many off-road or trail-oriented motorcycles. So I've ridden different motorcycles over the years, some larger capacity, but again, not really performance motorcycles. The bigger bikes that you get quite easily over here are very expensive in India to buy and to own and to fix. It's a huge challenge. So if you get a really reliable bike, that's great. But if and when things are not working, then you could be stuck for months because things have to be imported and parts are expensive and then you don't have mechanics who can work on them. So I prefer sort of owning and riding a motorcycle that's affordable to use, quite repairable.
So it's a 200cc. It has quite a large front. It has a larger front wheel, doesn't it? Is it 21 inch?
21
so
inch.
It's got some off-road kind of capability.
Yes, it does. And it's a light bike. And since I ride alone quite often, I want to be able to pick up my motorcycle. I want to be able to deal with all of that. I mean, you have a few other motorcycles that are available, but riding alone, this is probably the easiest to do. It's quite terrible on the highways. Yeah, you've got to really, really want to take that motorcycle somewhere to get through highway stretches, which I've done. I've taken it across India, but it's really fun when you get to the mountains. And because in India, you don't really have to go trail riding to ride off-road. Our roads are off-road. Very often you'll find people talking about how the roads in their city are just as bad as the roads you'd find up in the Himalayas. It's fascinating.
So what do you think you would have if you lived in the UK?
I think I'd do what Noel does. I mean, I'd get one every 3 months. Yeah. You guys have so many. I want to ride them all.
You rode Greg's 450 yesterday,
Oh,
right?
man. It was beautiful.
It's a different thing, isn't it? That
Yeah, immediately you realise, oh, crikey, this is a bit of a handful.
It's so tame when you want it to be tame. And then when you open it up, it goes.
So you start carpentry, is that correct?
I would say I scratched at the surface of carpentry, yes. And then...
And did you say your dad worked in carpentry?
Yeah, he does.
So were you working with him?
Yes, sort of. I mean, him... And in India, of course, things work differently. Like you have people who work, you have people who come and make stuff as well. So he knows how to do stuff and he makes stuff as well. But we also have some other people who work. So at that point in time, I would just spend some time with the carpenters learning some stuff.
you are basically the Indian Greg Villalobos, aren't you? Because he moved to London and studied carpentry.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh, it was intended as a compliment.
I think Greg does amazing
But
stuff.
you just stayed with Greg. Did this crop up?
Well, we didn't talk about this specifically because I thought it'll be like cliche to tell him that, you know what, I did the exact same thing.
That's funny though, isn't it? Because he had exactly the same experience where he saw people, went to get some garage doors from the local joinery shop, walked in, went to get some timber for him to make his own garage doors. That's the correct version. And he saw people making things with his hands, and this was a big revelation to him because he'd...
When I was quitting my job and people asked me, what are you doing next? Because typically in that universe, you quit, you go to another law firm. Or you quit, you start your own law firm. Or we were doing mergers and acquisitions and private equity and all of these things. So either you quit and you start your own business and you're going to raise Series A funding and Series B funding, and that's the universe that you live in. And people asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm probably going to go learn carpentry. And they were like, shut up. Tell us what you're really going to do.
Well, it didn't work out for Greg either because he wasn't big enough to lift up the pieces of wood.
We suffer from the same problems. Yeah.
That's where the guitar kicks in.
Tell us a little bit more about your YouTube channel and some of the adventures that you've had in India and elsewhere.
So Toll Free Traveler, the channel, sort of like I told you, it came about as just this thing to be able to share stories of my experience, my travel experiences. I never imagined at that point that it would be something that I do full time. In fact, the first time I got a subscriber, I didn't know what it was. And I'd been watching content on YouTube, and then I realized, hey man, you can subscribe to people. So then I went back to all of the people that I've appreciated content from, and I subscribed to them. Like until then, I didn't know how this works. I mean, ignorance is probably bliss. Yeah. Until today, people keep telling me that I should include that in my videos, and it comes from a good place because there is something to it, but I struggle to do that. I've just about learned to start my videos with like greeting people and saying, welcome to my video. This is who I am. And, at the end of the video, say, I will see you in the next one. I'm just about learning to do that. So I guess I started by wanting to share stories. It's built and like grown into a lovely community of people. That's something that, like I said, I realized when I meet people in person. When I meet people in person, like even being here today, it's because of social media that I'm able to be here. I'm able to meet both of you and talk to you. So anyway, so it started. We were talking about the channel. The channel is essentially built around my experiences as a traveler. Most of it is motorcycle travel, of course, but I do hope that someday it'll include more variety. Also, the things that I've learned from these travels, like quite often you go into things because you just don't know how to do it. And then at the end of it, you realize there was a very simple way to do it. So I try to bring that information out to people so that if they should choose to do this, they don't go through the same troubles that I've gone through. And of course, then as you start doing this and you get recognized as a person associated with motorcycles and motorcycling, then you're talking about like doing gear reviews, you're doing maybe some motorcycle first impression videos. All of these are really, really unique opportunities that have come my way. I think fundamentally, I enjoy creating content. So I like being behind the camera rather than in front of it. Every new type of content piece is a new challenge. So I enjoy that process. And sometimes I'm able to bring some perspective to it. So I try to like put that into YouTube as well. It's really just like one evolving journey. It's like a journey of my life.
And I really recommend people do have a look at Toll Free Traveler on YouTube. Rohith's approach is very calm and measured, and him talking to camera, talking about his travels and his bikes and his experiences is lovely. And seeing India from your perspective makes it look a wonderful place.
I think it's a very different vibe, if I can use that word, right? Because I travel solo. I've not traveled in groups as much. My videos and the way I speak and everything that I do has a very different tempo to the way I see a lot of other people doing it. Like I really enjoy all these videos, and I loved watching like all of you on it.
We don't mention Ollie on this podcast.
All right, we've just mentioned him 4 times. We're trying not to mention him, okay? Yeah. That tempo is so different from mine. But I guess, that's what creative process is. Everybody has their own style.
Well, I thought it was so interesting. We've had an intimate breakfast, haven't we, this morning? And Ollie's name, of course, came up during breakfast. And you were saying that he'd sort of seen a film of yours or liked to film something of yours. And you felt validated by that.
It was more in jest. I'm just saying that.
That made me think, I bet we're all seeking validation from each other all the time, aren't we?
I was saying that from the context of, like, you follow someone, right? I follow you guys. I follow Greg. I follow Ollie. I've been following all of you for a while. Of course, discovery takes some time. Like most people here in the UK won't know who I am because of the way social media platforms work, right? You have no idea who this person is unless you've been searching for India content. But eventually, when you find that content or you find something that you like, you start following it. To the person that you're following, you're nobody because you're just one in the crowd. And then there comes a day because of situation or circumstance where suddenly they wake up and they're like, oh, hey, you're worth knowing. They may not have seen a single piece of content that you've created. So it's not like they've seen something that makes them decide that they're interested in you. But there is some sequence of events that have unfolded that then make you form a connection. And that connection is then the opportunity to new experiences and new possibilities. So I use social media as a tool to meet new people who've done so many different things in life rather than living in this filter of one type of community.
It's definitely been the unintended consequence of doing this.
Yeah.
I never thought that it would lead to great days like this.
It's amazing, isn't it? The impact that it's had and the stuff that we're getting to do based on talking bollocks once a week for an hour.
Recording a stupid podcast, which we've stuck to. We have stuck to that religiously. Yeah. But at the same time, this has happened.
It was interesting the way, I discovered Rohith twice because John Ross got in touch because you'd contacted John about the TET when you were thinking of coming over here.
A huge source of inspiration to us.
Yeah. Amazing guy. His achievements are phenomenal and he's very modest. He won't come back on the podcast. We've invited him about 3 times and he won't. I said, come and talk to us about what's new on the TET.
Do you think it's because he doesn't want to speak more about it, or he doesn't want to talk to you guys again?
I did assume it was the former.
What did you do the last time around? Yeah,
you could be right. But John sent me your contact details and said, you should get this guy on the podcast. He's got a fantastic channel. And I thought, yes, that is a fantastic channel I watch. And then forgot all about it.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
That's so lovely to hear. Yeah.
But then I came across...
Now I see why you do these things online.
But then I came across I don't know how it just popped up into my YouTube feed, your video about the TVS that you rode, and you talked about your first experience of motorcycling. And I absolutely loved that and got in touch, messaged you the same day, and then realised, that's the same guy that John Ross mentioned a few months ago, whatever it was.
Some people would have chosen to not tell this story. I'm just letting you know. I mean, I appreciate the honesty, but I don't know whether it's a good thing or not.
Welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber.
Clive No Filter Barber.
When John told me about both of you, and I tried getting in touch with Noel as well.
This is one of these stories that you shouldn't...
No. I tried getting in touch with Noel as well. I mean, since we've spoken about you now, let's talk about Noel. And no response. To this day, I'm sure there's a message in some inbox of his which says, "Hi Noel, I'd love to know you."
You sneaked in under the radar. I was told about you way back in July, I think it was, and I was all geared up for hosting you. And
you knew about me and you also ignored me.
No, but I didn't realise you were here until yesterday or the day before yesterday.
Well, clearly it didn't matter, right?
It's funny because we do make these arrangements. There was another YouTube traveller that nearly came to my house a few weeks ago and didn't quite make it. So I didn't want, until you arrived, I didn't want to kind of...
It was almost too good to be true.
No, I was originally supposed to be here in July.
I just couldn't believe anyone would be foolhardy enough to come here in October.
I'm so glad I came in October. Very enjoyable on some days.
But why? Seriously, you have been glad you've come in October.
One is just the colours. I mean, the landscape is so different at this time of year. I think places are really beautiful. We don't, like I said, where I come from, we don't have 4 seasons in a year. We have 4 types of summer. To come here and actually experience a completely different weather and different landscapes and different things happening with the scenery. I've been up in Scotland the last few weeks, and I think that's a great way to sort of engage with nothing but nature. Because I've barely spoken to anyone. I've been wild camping. I've been riding like these beautiful routes up in northwest Scotland. So, and there's been such a wide variety of weather as well. So some of it is, when it's sunny, it's great. It's beautiful. And when it's cold, for me, it's like a motorcycling challenge. To get through that day, to power through that day, and to stay warm and to stay... I've spent so much time thinking about what gear I'm going to bring, how I'm going to tackle this, what are you going to do in certain situations, how are you going to wild camp, how are you going to find places, how are you going to stay dry, how are you going to eat food, all of these things. And to actually overcome some of those things is a big victory. It's a big part of your travel experience as well.
It's actually been unseasonably warm, hasn't it, for the last week or two. And I've been thinking, we kind of write off October as a time, certainly to go to Scotland. And the last few weeks, I've been thinking maybe...
It's a great time to go to Scotland.
There's no midges, is there? They can't come out when it's raining.
But it's not always raining. And there aren't too many people out there. I guess everybody thinks that October is the wrong time to go there. So there were, I think out of 5 nights that I was out, on 4 nights, there wasn't a single other like camper around.
Let's talk a little bit more about your travels in India. Where are your favourite places to travel in India from what you've seen so far? And I know it's a huge country and you haven't seen it all yet.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin, because in India, like each state is a minefield for exploration in itself, and every experience is so different. Like you go 600 kilometers and everything changes. Obviously, the Himalayas is something that everybody knows about, and it is mind-blowingly beautiful. But personally, I think I've enjoyed the northeast of India a lot. It's a part of India that's now more people are going there, but still relatively unexplored. And it's still very tribal. It's still very connected to like where people come from. Like the rest of India, I think, is a lot more urbanized, a lot more westernized. We look this way for a lot of like our development and change. But the northeast is just fascinating. It's so pristine in many ways, right? And there's so much variety when you go across those 7 or 8 states. You know, you've got Arunachal, which has like the mountain ranges, and then you've got Assam, which is completely the plains, and then you've got Meghalaya, which has these beautiful rolling hills and crazy amounts of rain, and Nagaland is like wild mountains. And the same thing happens as you go down. In fact, the first time I went to the Northeast, I've done 2 types of trips in the Northeast. One was in 7 days, I went across all 7 states, which was with the sort of defense forces over there. And then I spent 4 months in 4 states. Either way you do it, it's amazing.
That was your trip with the something rifles on the Jawas?
Oh, that was something else. We were about 24 people riding. With the defense forces, they're not motorcyclists. They were just given those bikes and they were told, you're going to go around. This is a rally.
So those guys hadn't ridden motorbikes before?
Some of them hadn't ridden motorbikes in 12 years. I mean, everybody knew how to ride a bike. But can you imagine taking people who've not ridden a motorcycle for 12 years and send them off into the jungle? It was amazing. And the way everybody just came together and made it happen, it was wow. People from that background, the military, and their approach to things is so different. It's inspiring.
What brought you to the UK?
I've been looking to travel overseas for a while. And I mean, I wanted to spend a lot of time exploring India. I've done that 3-4 years. I wanted to go out and do something very different. And obviously the easy options are to go further into Asia, right? So I've spent some time in Nepal. I've spent a little bit of time in Tibet. All fantastic. But I wanted to do something that felt entirely different. UK and Europe have been on my map. But post-pandemic, like sort of getting paperwork through, getting your visas, things take forever. Coming from India, things take forever. So the UK worked out. I do hope to someday also ride across Europe, because that's a whole lot of variety there. But I've been to the UK 10 years ago. 10 years ago I went to London, Cardiff and Edinburgh. So like one stop in each of England, Scotland and Wales. And when I did that, I left saying I'm going to come back in a year. I mean, I'm just like ticking off like this really old bucket list that I've had. You know, everything I'm someday going to do that, and then I eventually get down to doing it. So I thought this would be a great place to start. And to be honest, I've seen a lot of what all of you do here. And it's inspiring. It's great. I mean, I don't want to do exactly what you do, but I've wanted to come here and sort of experience it for myself. I didn't come here with a plan, but I'm enjoying everything that's happening as I'm here.
We might take you on some difficult-ish trails tomorrow. We'll take you on some easy trails. Some have slightly difficult bits in them.
You can ride my bike. Oh, no, actually you can't. That's Nicholas's bike. I'm taking good care of it and taking it off all of that.
If I was to fly into India, what would be my best option? Would it be to rent a bike or to buy a bike, say for a duration of a month or 3 weeks?
I think renting is simple, especially when you're earning in pounds and you're spending in rupees, especially up north. So you don't have rental easily accessible all over the country. But if you're looking to do the Himalayas, that's by now an industry in itself. It's very easy to rent a motorcycle and ride, and it might cost you like between 10 to 20 pounds a day. That's it. And you don't have like these crazy insurance costs. You don't have all of the related stuff that happens over here. Like literally to get on the road over here was so expensive. To come from India and get on the road over here before you even start riding. So expensive. It's the opposite going there. So you could buy a motorcycle, but I would say you only need that if you're going to spend, like, if you're on a really tight budget and you want to buy something cheap and sell it cheap. Obviously, buying new and selling, you're going to lose a lot of money. But if you buy cheap and sell cheap, then you're also going to have to deal with like maintenance and fixing, because these things are not going to be well maintained. So if you find a good rental agency, I think that's a good way to get into it. And then if you realize you want to spend a long time in the country, you can always buy one.
And what would be the best bike to travel on, do you think, as a hire bike? What would you go for?
I mean, I think with India, everybody's riding the Royal Enfields. Everybody who comes wants to ride the Royal Enfields. And the new bikes are quite good. The new bikes are quite reliable.
They're very popular here.
They're quite popular here as well.
Is that as good as your recommendation for Enfield would get? The new ones are quite good.
Well, I've owned an old one, right? It's taken me all over the country, but I spent a lot of time fixing it. You know, eventually one of the reasons I started riding a smaller bike from Hero, which is basically a Honda tie-up from the past, was because I didn't want to go to places and only see the service center or see the insides of my motorcycle. Like, I came all this way to also see like what's here, you know. But I was spending so much of my time, and for some people, they enjoy that process. They enjoy being so deeply connected to their motorcycle because the entire purpose of the ride is to be on the motorcycle. But for me, a motorcycle is like a means to travel more freely. So there's a lot more to it. So I wanted something that's reliable, cheap to maintain, easy to sort of deal with.
And you don't think the Enfield falls into that?
It's repairable. And
it's repairable.
It's repairable, yeah. And it's like, now I've ridden the new Himalayan. It's a lot better. It's quite reliable as well. I've, of course, not used it like extensively, but whenever I've ridden it, I've not had any issues with it. So that's a nice change from being someone who owned one for like 8 years and spent a lot of money on it.
What's the Enfield's biggest failure? Is it electrics or mechanical?
Well, it used to be that engine. I think that engine, the vibrations just was so demanding on every component of the motorcycle. Right? Now that that's improved, I think that's changing everything, including the rider. There were days when I would get off the bike, I would do 900 kilometers on my bike and I would still be vibrating. Like, you know. But there's a charm to those motorcycles. Yeah. There is a charm to it. So if you're coming to India and you're going to ride something, I mean, it depends on the type of rider that you are and what you're there to do. Like, if you're there to have a very authentic Indian experience, I think like riding one of those adds to the experience. And that's something that I think about when I travel. Like, you have this choice of taking one motorcycle around the world. I think, at least right now, that what I would enjoy is to go to different places and ride something from there. When I'm here, I'm riding this Honda. Of course, it's not British, but it is something that I can't get in India. It's such a huge part of my experience, the motorcycle. So might as well ride something different.
You'd go to America and get on the Harley, wouldn't you?
I would. I can't say what I would enjoy the most at the end, but I would gladly try different motorcycles.
I'd probably ride a Harley to like Montana or Idaho and then get on a dirt bike. I've never ridden a Harley. I did actually try and book a test ride a few years ago and they never got back to me. So fuck them.
When I was in London, I just spent a day going to all of the motorcycle showrooms just to see the bikes that we don't get to see in India. I just went to see them. I didn't even ride them. It was like, see them. Oh, they're real. Touch them.
If you're still here towards the middle of November, 19th to the 27th of
Motorcycle
November.
Live.
Yes.
I intend to go.
I'll see you there. We'll go the same day. There's a couple of other people going to come along too, so I'll meet you there. But yeah, I love that. And I said in the chat group that I've been going since I was a child with my father. And people said, oh, it's a bit boring. It's not for me. And I'm thinking, what? I love going.
Just great to be in those halls surrounded by bikes, isn't it?
I love it. And I just remember as a child getting every free thing that you could. So I'd have like 8 carrier bags full of leaflets of motorbikes. And they'd all go on my bedroom wall at home. All 4 walls were covered in pictures of motorbikes that I didn't own. Happy days. So yeah, I'll see you there. Do you know much about the Great Indian Trail, which I think is something similar to the Trans-Euro Trail?
So the TET is definitely an inspiration for it. The Great Indian Trail is something that a few of my friends created. They're people that I connected with because of social media, and eventually, I mean, they're amazing guys who are really, really dedicated to motorcycling and motorcycle travel and camping and growing a community of responsible travelers. Santosh, Abhi, Adi, there's a whole bunch of them. They are probably the people who should be talking about it, but in a sense, it is like a network of routes around India that keep you off the main highways. It's meant to be like a slow and immersive way of travel. We made a film about this a couple of years ago and I helped them do that. It was something that I really enjoyed doing and it's on my channel. I think it's Exploring Karnataka on Motorcycles or something like that. We did just one section of the Great Indian Trail. So the Great Indian Trail is try to encourage people to stay off the main highways, use smaller roads. it's not necessarily extreme trail riding. I mean, when you're opening it up to the public and you're giving them routes, so there's a website and you have GPX maps on it. You can download them and you can use them. So instead of trying to find the fastest way to go from point A to point B, which is what things like Google Maps recommend to you, this is something that sort of takes you through the countryside, recommends places where you can go and eat so you can sample local food, local culture, and also the money that you're spending on your tourism is then going to these smaller villages and these smaller towns that you're traveling through. So it doesn't just change your travel experience, but it also changes where your money is going and how that then benefits the local communities and things like that. So in terms of what it aims to do and what it aims to achieve, it's something phenomenal. And you should definitely have, I'd probably get you in touch with them and you should have them on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. We will do that.
They will be able to tell you about it in great detail. And they're all really, really fascinating guys who've done some amazing motorcycle travel themselves. Huge sources of inspiration for me.
The TAP began as pretty much a single line to take a rider across Europe. And since has become it's more of a convoluted, it's not a singular route as it used to be, but it's more designed to show off each particular area, so it's much more sort of convoluted now. Is what are we calling it, the G?
Grit or the Git, I guess. I guess grit sounds better.
The grit? It does sound better. Is the grit designed to take the rider on it's not a trip across India as such, it's more within the districts?
Yeah, so you have different maps for different states because India's divided into states, and in each state, there's so much to see and explore. So you have maps for each state. And then if you were to join it together, if you were trying to go all over India, then you'd also be able to get a map that takes you around the country. So if you went around the country, it might be 30 to 32,000 kilometers. We count in kilometers. By the way, I wanted to ask you, why do you count in miles but sell fuel in liters?
Well, welcome to post-Brexit Britain. I don't know.
Is this only post-Brexit?
No, we've had this since the decimalisation in the late 60s, when we went from pounds and shillings to.
So we went through decimalisation, and there are certain people trying to take us back to pre-decimalisation, where everything was in sixes rather than tens.
And the price of fuel is displayed in pence. It's 169 point something or 162 point something, which is pence.
It's madness.
The first time I saw it, I was like, is that what a litre costs? Yeah. 162 pounds? I'm cancelling my trip. I'm going home.
But we're buying fuel in litres. We're talking about, some of us are talking about miles per gallon.
Your speed limits are in miles.
Speed limits are in miles. It's the same with our inches and our meters. You could go to the builders merchants and ask for 2.4 meters of 3x2 inch timber. Yeah,
somebody asked me about mileage on the bike and I was like, I'm not trying to calculate.
We're completely mixed up here with our pounds and kilograms.
Well, on the CRF, it'll tells you on the dash.
It tells you miles per gallon, but I'm putting in fuel in litres, so then I need to convert from gallons to litre to then figure out what I'm getting.
I still know what a litre of petrol costs, but I'm still working in miles per gallon. Yeah, we're fairly mixed up, really.
And that's the same with you. We're in Europe, but we're not actually in Europe. We can't commit.
Speak for yourself, I'm still European.
I'm Indian.
So this is why I love riding in Karnataka. Grit Ride 21, episode 2.
Yeah, I think that's the video that I'm talking about. That's the one you should see.
So that's one of your 201 videos.
Oh, really? I didn't even realize there were that many.
138,000 subscribers.
Now, you're pretty much self-taught, I imagine, are you?
Entirely.
When you look back at your sort of early films now, do you cringe at the early ones? Do you feel you've come a long way?
The early films, I still enjoy.
How's it changed?
The early vlogs, I cringe at. Filmmaking versus vlog making. This is something that I constantly have to sort of struggle with. I would prefer to just make films. I could do this whole trip and make one film from it. That would be the ideal universe. It won't be sustainable for me. So then I'm forced to sort of break down content. And yeah, the thing with social media is because you're dependent on the platforms, you're forced to shape your content based on what they want you to put up there. I don't enjoy that. And then the audience also sort of starts changing. Early films to if I made a film today, definitely equipment and skill and awareness and planning has changed. But early vlogs to today, yeah, man, I wish I didn't have to make vlogs. I wish I could just make films.
When you say forced, what's forcing you to do it in a way that you don't want to do it?
It's just that thing. I mean, so today I have 138,000 subscribers. And if I was putting out a video every 2 days, chances are that 100,000 of them would be notified of my video. But because I take 4 months off and I don't put videos up for 4 months, eventually when I put it out, maybe 3,000 are notified because I'm just no longer on the algorithm. I'm nowhere on that map, which then doesn't make it sustainable for me because the amount of effort and time and resources I'm investing into this, it's not worth it. The trade-off is really not worth it. I mean, you're not doing it for the views, but then if you're making a living doing this, then that matters as well.
So it's not a question of number of subscribers. Are you saying that if you don't produce regular content, the algorithm will remove you from being...
My understanding of it is that the algorithm rewards the person who gets more people to watch more content more often. It doesn't matter whether it's good quality, bad quality, whatever it is. It's as simple as that. More people spending more time off the platform more often.
I still think good quality will win out in the long run. I think just keep doing what you're doing.
I think, yeah, definitely. Because like I was saying, I look at my audience more as a community. These are people that I would love to meet and hang out with someday. They're not just people who follow what I do. So when you look at it like that, what you're cultivating is much more long term. It's just that you have a medium in between you that changes what can reach them or can't. Hopefully things work out.
We can learn from this, Noel. If you just get better at what you're doing, we'd have a lot more listeners, I think. You're holding us back. So tomorrow, we're heading into the Lake District with John Ross, grandfather of the Tets.
He won't like that. Godfather.
Godfather. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Godfather of the Tet. And I think you're going to have a good day tomorrow. I think you'll enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. Greg was asking me about this. I mean, we had this conversation a couple of days ago because he was asking about English as well. And I told him that in my house in India, we speak English. Like, I'm from Tamil Nadu. Technically, my mother tongue is Tamil. But all of us, my parents, my siblings and I, we speak in English when we speak to each other. So it's probably our first language. Of course, the accent is different and the language is different. I don't get British slang. I don't get, like, within regions, you guys have different terminology. Like today you were telling me about a fell. Where's the fell? What's the fell? Sometimes it's easier to not ask for directions here. But it's been such a different experience for me riding over here.
That's what's always hard when somebody, when you are with somebody who's from a different place. It's great in a way because I'm hoping this will happen tomorrow. You do start to see it through their eyes a little bit.
But I love taking people into the Lake District or the Dales that haven't seen it before. When the Team Yaris came up a few weeks ago, those guys have all ridden in Surrey or in southerly parts of Britain, and they came up here, and I think one of them said, this is what trail riding is. And those guys have been riding for years, and they came here and it just opened up their eyes.
It's a different place, yeah. We'd be the same riding down there.
No, we wouldn't. We'd just be bored of their stupid ruts.
I was like, I went right down and rode.
He's just saying that to be controversial.
I am saying that to be controversial. Is it working?
It's called social media sauce. Yeah?
TAMP podcast, slag south.
Yawn.
What were you going to say something?
No, I was going to say when I went down and rode in the southwest of England in the summer, and that was a revelation.
Yeah, I think Cornwall and Devon are fantastic.
Yeah,
aren't
that was
they,
wonderful.
Well?
I hope to get there on this trip.
What's the one-way lane called in the lakes that takes you up to the amazing view above Coniston?
Oh God! Now this is where we would differ because there's one lane in the Lake District that used to take you from point A to point B. Then you could travel on, and then it was closed halfway along. So then you're in this silly situation where you can still ride at the beginning of it, but then you're blocked and you have to turn around and come down. Now, for me, that's the end of that track because what's the point of riding up to it to then ride down? It's not on the way to somewhere. I want to be moving forward through a changing landscape and not just riding somewhere for the sake of it and doubling back. So I haven't been up there since, really. Whereas it's always on Clive's to-do list is to go up a track, stop, and come back down again.
There's two things about that trail. A, it's very technical. It's been slightly graded recently. Some of the bigger bomb holes have been filled in. But it's a fantastic ride up there if you like technical trails. But the other thing is the view from the top of that fell is quite spectacular, isn't it?
Yes, but it's also a bit of a pain to get to begin with, isn't it?
I've got it on a circular route.
Okay.
So you're right, it is quite a long road drag to get to the trail. I'm just trying to find a picture to show Rohith, and he can decide whether he wants to ride up it or not.
Speaking of things that you have quite complex, I mean, every person that I talk to, here's one thing that I never expected to sort of deal with. I think I've already spoken to you about it, but this thing about motorcycle theft here. In India, we have so many bikes. We have so much, and we have a lot of income disparity, and we have a lot of challenges that would possibly make people want to steal motorcycles, and yet our motorcycles are quite safe. I've never had to put locks on my motorcycles. Disc lock, chain lock, some other lock, a lock that sings to itself. I mean, you've got so many varieties and so many things going on, and insurance is not valid if you don't have your locks on.
And we also know that none of these devices actually will stop our bike being stolen.
Exactly. by a professional. I hear that as well. Well, all of it is just prevention. And like if someone really wanted to get it, they would get it.
And actually the best thing is probably just to put a sheet over your bike.
That's what they recommend. Or live somewhere nice where it doesn't happen. We listened to Austin Vince's podcast in the car earlier, and he said he had 8 DR350s, all of which were stolen.
Tomorrow should be about just getting somewhere easily and then having a nice long... And the Meadow Door and the cafe that we're riding to is closing on the 10th of November forever.
Well, I've started going to a different one now around the corner.
Oh, a posh one.
Expensive, yeah. If that's what you mean by posh. So, yeah, we'll make sure we go to the Meadow Door for one last time then. I think we might be done. This is where you ask one last question.
One last question.
What's it going to be? Do you feel a pressure when you have to ask one last question?
No, but it's not pressure because actually the one last question winds him up because he wants to finish. And I've just thought, I've just realised I just had thought of something.
So there could be thousands more questions. We could talk for hours.
Yeah, and technically we have been talking for hours before this as well.
Yeah, you've been here for 24 hours now, and we've probably, we've slept for 6 of those hours, but we've been talking for the rest of the time.
But there's so much to talk about because, especially when you come from different countries and different worlds, but you have common interests. In a sense, like you have so much in common, but everything that you know is so different. Even the basics, often you're asking about it and you're curious to know about it. It's so fascinating. Like I'm enjoying this experience of being in an entirely unfamiliar world. I've missed it. There was a time when it felt like that riding in India. There's still stuff that happens in India, but the more you do things, like you start feeling like, okay, I know these parts of it. There's only so much. Like it's incremental, like equipment. The change is incremental. Whereas here, everything is new.
That nicely leads me into my final question. In that when you've been on the road and you have been eating out, if you have eaten out, I know you've been eating a lot in the tent, how have you taken to the English food or the Scottish food even? Have you tried haggis?
I haven't actually. But, food's been good. Yeah.
He's been polite.
He's being polite, isn't he? He doesn't like it.
No, so, okay. Interestingly, I know a lot of people who come from India and then want their Indian food. But for me, like food is inherently a part of the travel experience. Again, it's just like wanting to come here and ride a different motorcycle. You come here and you eat what's available over here. Even something like being able to go into a grocery store and get yourself a great like slices of ham and lovely cheese and good bread and put it all together and make yourself sandwiches. I brought my great coffee with me. But other than that, everything else you can just do it. That's something that we don't get to do over there. So I'm enjoying doing that. And when you go out and eat a meal, yesterday I had a meal with Greg at a pub and that sandwich was lovely. And we had fish and chips last night and that was a lot of food. I don't know how you'd get through that. Like it was 3 meals for me, but it was brilliant. This morning's breakfast was a full English and I had to go with a small breakfast because I'm a small person. But it was lovely and I enjoyed that meal. And it's so different from what you would get as an English meal in India. Indian Chinese and Indian food in England. I've had some, in fact, in Edinburgh. I had some Indian food with a friend of mine over there. And it was a lovely meal, but it was Indian food in Edinburgh, and I appreciate it for that.
How different?
So from what I know of working in India is that we have curries here, and it's always a thick sauce, which is kind of what a curry is. But in India, curry is like one dish, and you have millions of other dishes that don't have that thick tomato-based sauce that pretty much every curry has.
Yeah. Obviously you have variety and in India each state has its own food and within each state different places have different types of food. Some places prioritize vegetarian food, some places prioritize non-vegetarian food, and then within the non-veg in some parts they don't eat this type of meat, somewhere else they eat a different type of meat. Where you get your meat from changes, so everything is so diverse over there that it's impossible to take something like that and then make it into one restaurant in another country because you're also sourcing your ingredients from different places. So I understand that, and the palate is very different here as well. So you've got to adapt. I've enjoyed it though, every aspect of it and whatever's possible over here. So no complaints. I don't miss anything.
And you didn't find haggis?
I think I just need someone to be like, we're doing this now.
Yeah.
And then we do it. It's very hard to walk into some place and be like, here, take my money and give me haggis, right? Coming from India. No. Yeah. Sometimes you need someone to just like pull you over that line. Yeah.
So a massive thanks to Rohith for making it over and spending some time with us. We had a great weekend with him. Really nice bloke. Good fun to spend time with. Don't forget to go and check out his YouTube channel, which is the Toll Free Traveller. There's some fantastic films on there. I think you'll enjoy them. I also wanted to mention a couple of people he mentioned during the recording of the podcast. First of all, Nicholas Wilkinson, who runs a company called Rogue Riders, who run trips to India. Nick was the guy that lent Rohith the bike, which it was pretty much brand new. So that's an incredibly generous and kind thing to do, Nicholas. So massive kudos to you and or everybody at Rogue Riders. Also, massive kudos to the team that created the Grit, the Great Indian Trail. Abhijit, both the Santoshes, Aditya and Sean. Chaps, that's an absolutely massive achievement. It looks incredible. You've done an incredible thing. Hopefully we'll get to ride with you at some point on the trails. Looks amazing. Right, that's it for now. See you next time. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.